Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started. If you're waiting on anyone else to join you, feel free to send them a message or shoot them a text so they can join us here on the Q&A webinar. So first, I would like to welcome everybody to the FAA TFM-AID Challenge Q&A session webinar. If you are looking for the summary document, which you can follow along with the Q&A session with, you can see that link in the chat. Let's see, make sure it's sent to everyone. So we invite you to go ahead and follow along there. I also want to let you know that this session is being recorded and will be available on the website on the FAQs page as soon as we can get that downloaded and cleaned up for you. So I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us. Here is a short agenda for what is going to happen for this Q&A session. I'll make some introductions for the team at NIA who's helping run the challenge, and as well for the steering committee that we have from the FAA. We will also have a short context and background discussion provided by Matt Sanders here, who is our chairman for the challenge. And then we will cover questions received in advance, which include the technical and programmatic questions that came in. And then we will take any on-call questions, so that would be follow-up questions or any additional questions that you and your team may have toward the end of the call. And then we'll do a brief wrap-up, which has some reminders and a couple of links for you. So first, I'd like to introduce everyone from our team. I'm Victoria O'Leary. You can see my email address there. After the call, if you and your team have additional questions, feel free to send me an email. My email address is also available on the FAQs page, so you can find it there after the call. Joining us from our team is Robin Ford, Stacy Dees, and Shelly Spears. So they'll be helping us out with that. And this is our very important FAA TFM-AID Challenge Judges Steering Committee. There are a couple of other people on the steering committee, but these are the individuals who will be helping to judge your proposals when they come in, your PDRs. So we have Matthew Sanders here joining us from the FAA, of course. Matt, you can say hi. He's our judges chairman for the panel. We also have Kenneth Allendorfer joining us, Melissa Brown from MITRE, Wayne Hubbard, Miro Leckie from Mosaic ATM, Kishana Tyler, Tanya Uditsky, and Ben Willems. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Matt, who is going to provide a little bit of context and discussion for the challenge. Take it away, Matt, and let me know when you'd like to advance slides.
Sure. Thank you, Victoria. And thanks everyone again for joining. That's worth repeating. I know that time is valuable and we're excited that you're interested in this competition and interested in hearing some more information from us and engaging in a dialogue here today with your questions. As we anticipate some will come up real time here. What I have is on the order of 7 or 8 slides that provides not details of the challenge, but rather some context around it in defining traffic flow management and the systems at hand and what we anticipate using this challenge to do. Much of which you can find in resource material that we have shared, but I'm going to hit a few key points as we go through. Next slide is the agenda, which consists of an intro to traffic flow management, or TFM, and then going to spend some time talking about the legacy capability that we have, which is called the traffic flow management system, and the future capability that we're looking to deploy, the flow management data and services, or FMDS capability, which is directly where this competition fits in. And I'll tie that together and then we'll get to your questions. Next, please. And showing a background here on TFM, or traffic flow management, is much like it sounds, rather intuitive in saying that it is the idea of managing air traffic to be as efficient as possible, as the bullet says, to minimize delays and congestion, recognizing that there is variability in traffic demand and recognizing that there are a lot of constraints that need to be addressed. The outcome of good traffic flow management is safe, orderly, and expeditious flow of traffic. And one of the ways that's done is through using various types of traffic management initiatives or TMIs. And what those lead to is the goal of balancing in the system demand, as the scale there shows, demand and capacity, with passengers, with cargo, capacity being affected by weather, by system outages, as shown on the right, by construction, and the idea of achieving a balance between those two. And I think one more click, giving the the idea of maintaining safety throughout all of this, but optimizing efficiency even in spite of those variabilities in demand and those constraints that are on the system. Next. One of the things that emphasizes the need for these different types of traffic management initiatives, just shown in this picture, we've all seen a weather map that looks something like this. What we're seeing, say, half the country right now, and we can see various weather represented here on this graphical display and see the importance and the need for TMIs, the traffic management initiatives of various type that both ripple through the system and have effects throughout the nation, that many are needed to balance this demand and capacity. They have ripple effects throughout, and weather itself has ripple effects throughout. This is just to emphasize by a simple picture that we've all seen how important this is and how many different pieces can be working in play at once that are affecting the system. Next, please. Well, there's a lot on this graphic. I'm not going to go into all of it for the purpose of this meeting, but this shows the infrastructure of the legacy capability known as traffic flow management system. This overall picture, the overall takeaway here is to demonstrate that there are touch points and users of this system throughout the nation, or the NAS we call the National Airspace System, and even international users who use this. In some ways, you could call it the backbone of air traffic system, or certainly the backbone of traffic flow management capability. And what we're seeing here is pictures along the top row that represent different pieces of NAS facilities, FAA facilities. That's the Air Traffic Control System Command Center on the left, we often just call the command center. The air route traffic control centers in the next one in the center. Your terminal facilities and towers, the TRACONs and towers is the third picture. And then the other picture representing military facilities who might use this data, might access this capability in some way. You can see the numerous points all over the map of the country, that there are access points everywhere in different types of facilities who use TFMS, many different users as indicated by that yellow bubble, some web-based, some with hardware suites at their facility, particularly internal users here in the FAA. And then the bottom component there lists tools that are used by our, what it says, collaborative decision-making partners. Those are typically our large airlines, our large air carriers that use the tools provided by TFMS also. That's the legacy capability, as shown very briefly on a map here, very succinctly. And next shows what that does, and this series of graphics is going to indicate the complexity of it. Again, this is relevant to the challenge to give you some context here to show you why this is important to us and what we're hoping to get out of this. That's why I'm spending so much time on this legacy capability. What's shown there on the graphic now is that TFMS does the function of managing data. There's weather data, there is flight and flow data, all throughout the system that is ingested by TFMS. Next. And that is presented to users and offers opportunity for users to interact with it via a number of applications, some of which are shown here that users use to, as the bottom text there, the bold text at the bottom says, assess the state of the NAS, that is the demand and capacity that we were talking about earlier, and then to conduct traffic flow management activities to adjust demand and capacity as needed based on what they're seeing. As I said, this is an overview, rather a snapshot of some of the tools that are used by users. The traffic situation display, TSD, the flight schedule monitor, traffic management log, NAS monitor. And what's shown there at the bottom is an opportunity for the system to provide advisories, different situations that may be providing an air traffic advisory that are publicly available, and an opportunity to look up different playbook options should a TMI need to be set in place. And there are specific references, pre-established playbooks that if we're encountering constraints in this area and need to adjust here accordingly, there are various, much like in football, we're in football season, you would look up in the playbook and execute something that's predefined to simplify and expedite how they would manage that demand and capacity. Next, please. The system also has tools that allow for quality control via post-event analysis, just snapshot there, and an opportunity to, of course, to monitor and maintain operations, ensure that all is operating as intended, and for technicians, either on-site or remotely, to view that depending on the context of the facility they're in. And one more indicates, this is simply circled to show that there are 57 separate applications. The point is there are a lot. The specific number is not crucial, but there are a lot in the legacy system that have numerous different interactions with users. And we are presenting this to you to have some context of how this fits into the overall picture and the significance of what users are doing in the NAS. Next, please. I'm going to go through this briefly. That I've mentioned a few times that TFMS is the legacy capability that we at the FAA, my office and several others here on the call, are working to replace over the coming years. It has some shortfalls in the system. It is functioning and aiding users to perform traffic flow management, to maintain efficiency of the NAS by all these different traffic management initiatives and so forth that we were talking about. But it does need to be replaced. It has aging architecture and technology. It's got some inefficiencies in the way that users can use it and the capabilities that we have to integrate new software into it. It's not able to meet current availability targets and reliability targets for the NAS. Following on to the first one, it does have an outdated architecture that really, in this case, manifests itself in rather resource-intensive maintenance and resolution of issues. Very, very much more resource-intensive than we desire them to be. And we're seeking to replace it so that we can leverage best practices in technology and software development in cloud capability and infrastructure use. So the forthcoming system, FMDS, Flow Management Data and Services, is a replacement for TFMS. And now I'm going to transition into why this is relevant here to this competition. So it's going to address those shortfalls that I mentioned on the previous slide. And it's intended, one of the key pieces, I won't say the key piece, but one of the important pieces is to, as that second sub-bullet says, is to implement a streamlined interface to improve user experience through an integrated situation awareness display application. And that's represented, if you're looking at the graphic, I recognize some of this is hard to read, but this shows up in the resources that we've shared in our concept of operations on the resources page. We're focusing on the bottom left side here for this competition that shows the display used by FMDS internal users. That means users at the FAA conducting those traffic flow management activities. The FMDS replacement focuses on everything you see here. However, the focus area of the competition is on the experience of those internal users, and specifically someone at the command center. And in the scenario, the user scenario that we've given you in the resources page to walk through. Now, this picture shows the overall high-level operational concept, but that area in the bottom left, that single display intended to integrate many of those applications I was showing, or many of the functions rather, of those applications I referred to earlier, is what we're focusing on here. It will give improved performance, consolidated application suite, intended to provide a better ability, better opportunity all around for traffic managers to do what they need to do for their jobs and to maintain efficiency and traffic flow in the NAS. And I believe that's all I have. We'll get into your user questions shortly, but I wanted to see if there's any comment or question thus far on the handful of slides we walked through.
Thank you, Matt. As I put in the chat, we'll have an opportunity to ask questions on the challenge at the end of this call. But right now, if anyone has a question for Matt based on this presentation, please go ahead and unmute yourself and you can ask that question now. If you think of a question between now and the end of the call, you're also welcome to ask additional questions then based on this presentation. And this will all, like I said, be recorded and posted to the FAQs page within a week from today, hopefully sooner. So if there's anyone who has a question, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask it now. Okay, I don't see anyone unmute themselves. You can also pop your questions into the chat if you don't have a mic, and I'll read it out loud. But seeing no questions for the time being, we can go ahead and move forward. And Matt and some of the other judges will be helping to answer the technical questions that we received in advance. So thank you all for submitting those questions in advance. Again, you can follow along using that link I put into the chat on the Q&A webinar summary document. So the first question, what is the expectation for the prototype?
Sure. And everyone, I'll take this question. There are two others on the call, Alicia Fernandez and Miro Lakey, who are going to take some of the subsequent ones that come here. But as far as our expectations for the prototype, we're looking for an interactive simulation that gives the stakeholders, and we as the judges representing the stakeholders, a taste of how the final product will both look and perform and will mimic the end product. So we're not asking, however, that you develop a fully capable system, and that is to replace FMDS, replace TFMS with FMDS, as I was talking about earlier, but focus on that front end user interface and the experience and the workflows rather than the back end pieces that drive that experience. I mentioned in the slides, and I want to reinforce here, please take note of the airspace flow program scenario provided on the resources page of the website under number 4. And that is critical to walk through the scenario and then some guidance and focus areas on what we want you to have to do, what we have for you to do rather. And then item 9 on the resources page also refers to various tools and recommendations for defining a prototype, what some guidelines are for a prototype and how it's distinguished from a wireframe and mock-up. And that's a good reference for how you could best address this competition.
Thank you. Second question, what systems are currently in place that will be integrated into the new flow data management system interface?
Hey, Matt, did you just want me to take this one?
Yes, either you or Miro, Alicia, however we divided them up.
Sure. Yeah. So this challenge is specifically focused on the TSD, the traffic situation display, FSM, the flight schedule monitor, and NTML, the National Traffic Management Log applications. So in the slide that Matt showed that had the various parts of the existing system represented, so it's really focusing on the stuff on the left-hand side of that slide. There is a overview of those 3 applications with some screenshots and how they work in the traffic, the TFM, the traffic flow management background document. That's item number 3 in the list of resources.
Thank you, Alicia. The next question I think is for Miro. Number 3, can you please explain the design constraints in detail?
So as far as design constraints in the guidelines, we did provide a screen size and resolution that is our constraint in terms of how big, how small you can make different things on the screen. You can plan on the user having multiples of those displays. Our typical workstation has 2 or more displays. But I would recommend that you not plan on the user for the specific scenario that we laid out, the AFP scenario, in using all of this available space. The users are typically multitasking, doing several things at once. So you don't want to just have your AFP scenario take up all of the space. And when you're designing for those multiple screens, you also want to keep in mind how the user is going to manage the information or how they are going to manage information that's spread across more than one monitor. So keeping things kind of accessible and not sucking up all the real estate is kind of one of the challenging things in designing a screen for this domain.
Thank you. The next question is for Alicia. How can participants learn about what the current traffic flow management system GUI looks like?
Yeah, so I'll again refer you back to that TFM background document. That's item number 3 on the challenge resources website. So it does have some screenshots of the existing, or I should say just relevant portions of the existing system. There are also, there's another link, item number 7 in that resources page, that will take you to the FAA System Command Center website. And on that page, they have a video. It's just a YouTube video that provides a really good introduction, just overview of what they do at the command center. And included in some of that, you'll be able to see some of their systems. I mean, they're not like close-up views of the GUI, but you'll be able to see sort of how their systems and their displays kind of fit into their overall environment. And the other element is the user guides for the TSD, the traffic situation display, and the FSM, the flight schedule monitor applications. There are also links to those user guides on that challenges, or on the resources page, number 8. These are hundreds and hundreds of pages long, so I wouldn't recommend trying to read them or really understand them, but you know, they will provide some useful reference so that you can see the screenshots of the existing system.
Thank you, Alicia. And if you're following along in the Q&A summary document, all of these items are linked so that you can go to them directly. Alicia, I think the next question is also for you. Will we be given data to model from?
Yeah, so the short answer is no. As Matt indicated earlier, we're really looking for teams to focus on the user interaction. So, there's a lot of data, a lot of data management that TFMS does. And, that is a whole challenge in and of itself. So we really want to make sure that teams aren't getting focused down the wrong path of trying to model the data and manage the data. So if you want to see the kinds of information that is presented to users, specifically focused on this AFP scenario, I'll refer you to that AFP scenario document. So especially there's figure 3 on page 4, provides some of the information that the users are viewing in order to make decisions about that AFP. Again, that TFM background document has some images of a flight list and, demand graphs and the metrics that traffic managers are using in order to, again, help them make decisions about this AFP. And then another one of the documents that's linked from that resources page is the FMDS concept of operations that does have some flight lists. So information about specific flights and lists of flights and how that's currently presented to users.
Thank you. The next question is for Miro. Can you please provide some examples of existing pain points in the traffic flow management system?
So as you'll see from the list here, our main pain point, kind of at a high level, is lack of integration. More specifically, that when our users are completing a specific task, and the task we're using as an example here is the AFP, they have to transition between multiple applications. They do one action in one application, switch to another application, do a little more of the workflow, switch to a third application. As part of kind of switching between those applications, they're having to make duplicate entries into separate applications. And because there are multiple applications, they are also having to manage multiple windows across multiple screens and basically being buried by windows. And then lastly, because of the multiple applications and the fact that different applications had different developers, the presentation within each of the applications is different, leading to training issues and familiarity with the different applications. And this is all presented in our ConOps as where we show the AFP, Airspace Flow Program workflow, which is part of the resource number 5.
We lost you, Tori.
Yeah, that would make sense. So the next question is also for Miro. What would you like to see added, removed, or improved in the traffic flow data management system? If possible, can you please provide a wish list of features for the new advanced flow data management system?
So our single biggest want is integration, integration, and integration. We'd like to get rid of all of the pain points we previously mentioned, and we'd like the workflow for any of the traffic management actions to be more consolidated, not having to repeat data entry and such. Any visualizations, we'd like them to be more consistent than they are today, and quicker and easier to understand and mentally assimilate. While you're doing this, we'd also like you to keep in mind that these different capabilities are used by different types of facilities, which like to present their data and view their data in different ways. So although we are challenging you to look at this from the ATC, SCC, the FAA Command Center perspective, do keep in mind that the display needs to be flexible enough to support different roles within the FAA so they can to customize the displays to their own specific needs. But as far as the challenge goes, your main focus is on the command center user.
Thank you. And our last question is for Alicia. How can participants learn about what the current traffic flow management system GUI looks like?
So I'll refer you again back to the answer to question 4. All of the sources that we talked about there. The TFM background document, I think, is a good starting point. And that video that's on the FAA System Command Center website that will, like I said, give you an overview, just sort of an introduction to what they do at the command center. And then the user guides if you really want to be in for a treat.
Thank you, Alicia. So I'll be speaking just for a little bit now. We have some programmatic questions that we received in advance, about 2. So I'll go ahead and cover those, and they're a little long. Are participants allowed to interview traffic flow managers and federal employees to learn about existing pain points in the current traffic flow management system? So this answer is pretty simple, but we want you to keep in mind, the idea behind the challenge. So yes, for the most part, if your team has existing connections or reaches out independently to government or industry experts, you are welcome to interview them for your project. However, we can't provide contact info or make those connections for you. However, our panel of judges really want you to keep in mind that we want to see new concepts and ideas. So interviewing past controllers and traffic managers may slant your designs toward the existing system, which your design is meant to, replace. So be open-minded and aware that different types of facilities will give you different viewpoints than may be used at the ATC SCC. Is that right, Matt?
Yes, that is correct. And that's something that's worth emphasizing, Tori. I'm glad you stopped there because of the nature of the way different, and others on the FA side of the call are welcome to chime in here, but the nature of differing operations among FA facilities, not only in function between the command center, but even in the way specific geography and everything affects the way one facility might operate in some ways very differently than another. So that is a helpful perspective to keep in mind, that someone you speak to may have a very different viewpoint of things. It's not wrong. It's just different by nature of where that person works, what their history has been, than the command center might have.
Thank you, Matt. So again, in the interest of fairness, please do not contact anybody who is listed on our About Us page as part of the judging panel. If you have questions for them, go ahead and reach out to me. My email address is here on the screen, and we'll forward those questions to our panel and then reply back to you with the answer. And then those questions and answers will all be posted to the FAQs page for everyone to access. So that way everybody has the same information going forward from the judging panel and from the challenge. And our last question here. We can deliver prototypes for multiple ideas. Is there a limit? So a single university can submit more than one expression of interest or PDR. You guys are welcome to submit multiple ideas to the challenge. And students and faculty can participate on more than one team. If your multiple ideas are kind of integral to each other and layered on top of each other, then you would probably submit that as one EOI and one PDR. And that design would incorporate all of your ideas, and it would just be one submission. But if you have different ideas from different team members, or you just have several different ideas that you want to submit, you could submit each one as its own unique expression of interest in PDR, responsive to the prompt. But we do want to warn you that the PDRs take a significant amount of time and effort and research to deliver a quality proposal. So we suggest that if you plan to do that, consider nominating a separate team lead for each idea that you have, and then hosting and scheduling separate meetings for each idea. That way you can keep your ideas organized and focused. It's not here on the slide, but I also want to mention that if one of those ideas tends to seem weaker to you and you end up not being able to continue working on it, that's perfectly fine too. The expressions of interest are non-binding, so if you end up submitting an expression of interest for this other idea and then later you're not able to pursue it, that's totally fine. Go ahead and just send us an email and we'll mark that on our end. And there's no problem with that. You can continue with the idea that you have more time to work on and that you think may be more successful. All right. So now we have a good opportunity for everyone here that has joined us to ask any additional or follow-up questions based on the questions and answers that you have heard today. If you have questions for Matt based on his presentation from earlier, you're also welcome to ask them now. And I want to invite you to go ahead and unmute yourself now and ask those additional questions. And if you don't have a mic, you're welcome to pop those questions into the chat and I'll read them aloud for our panel. VJ, do you have a question for us? Well, so you guys can go ahead and think about more questions, and if you've got questions and you want to put them into the chat, go ahead and do that. I'm going to move on to this slide just so that we can help explain a little bit more for you guys. So if you have any future questions, we ask you to direct them to me. My email address again is right here. It's also on the FAQs page. So you guys also have probably received emails from me at this point. Feel free to reach out to me and we will forward your questions to the right place and get them answered. We will respond to them directly and post them to the FAQs page for everyone to see. So it's worthwhile to go back and check that page frequently. Questions asked during this webinar, if you guys have any on-call questions, will get transcribed and then added to that Q&A summary document that you already have. The link won't change. New information will just get added to the bottom in that other section. So you'll be able to find that on the FAQs page, as well as with a recording of the session and the chart deck. And you can use this QR code to view the challenge guidelines. We highly recommend that you do that. And I want to open the floor again if we have any on-call questions or any additional or follow-up questions. All right, I'm not seeing any questions for the moment, so we'll go ahead and move on to our next slide. Again, you can pop them into the chat or just unmute yourself at any point. This slide here, we have some important upcoming dates. So for prospective teams, that would be all of you. March 2nd is the next deadline that you really want to pay attention to. That's the deadline to submit PDR packages. So if you have any questions up until that point, send them on to me and we'll get them answered. We also want to remind you, if you haven't seen already, that we've extended the expression of interest deadline to January 30th. So if you guys have any of those additional ideas that you would like to submit as a separate expression of interest, go ahead and do that. We've extended the deadline. And also invite your friends and classmates to participate. We've popped in a link here just to our main page. They're welcome to participate on their own team or alongside you. March 30th, we will notify teams of their selection status. So we'll be selecting up to 5 finalist teams to move forward. May 17th is the deadline for online registration and payment for finalist teams. And then June 7th will be that deadline for the CDR package. June 25th will be the deadline for presentation files. And then our forum, of course, will be June 12th through 14th. So I'll give everyone one last opportunity. Do you guys have any additional questions that you'd like to ask our panel? That's great. Maybe that means we've answered all of your questions perfectly. I really hope that that's the case. Matt, did you have something?
I did. I wanted to ask something to make sure we didn't have any contradictory information out there, to make sure we were clear. I believe, can you go back to the forum?
Sure.
The state, I believe those are
You're
not the
right.
correct dates.
Those are not
Just so
the
we're
right
clear with everybody on the call.
Good point. I think these were some placeholder dates from earlier. So I am actually going
I
to,
have June 28, 29.
that sounds right. So here I've pulled up on the website. Again, you can view all of our resources here. This is really important. And I've even added links that weren't here before, so you guys can go directly to these user manuals. Again, don't read them front to back. That's, like Alicia said, you'll be in for a treat, but they may be more useful as reference material. But here are our deadlines, and the forum here, it's correct on the website, and we'll correct it here in the chart deck. That's June 28th and 29th, Matt. You're absolutely correct.
Thanks, Tori. Didn't want anybody to get the wrong impression here.
Absolutely.
Appreciate it.
So, not seeing any additional questions, I just want to thank you all for joining us today, and thank you for submitting expressions of interest for the competition. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help. The chart deck will be available within 1 week of the call, hopefully more recently, hopefully by Friday. We'll get this up along with the recording. And we want to wish you the best of luck moving forward with your concepts and designs, and we really look forward to seeing them.